Aimen Dean is a man with an unusual story. A former Al-Qaeda operative turned MI6 agent. Born in Saudi Arabia, Dean lost both his parents at a young age, then took solace in Islamic studies. He then fought as a jihadist for 4 years, first in Bosnia and then in Afghanistan, before turning and spying on his former compatriots for the British Secret Service for 8 years. His story is one of violence and brutality, followed by insight and redemption. You fought in Bosnia. Describe for me the atmosphere among your brothers in arms, and what was the collective goal in the fighting?
In Bosnia, it was more clear-cut. There was a ethnic cleansing. There was, what the United Nations at the time described as genocide, and at the same time, so it was justified because we were wearing military uniforms, and the enemy was wearing military uniforms. We were not stationed in the cities. We were stationed in the mountains. There, we were not fighting as operatives. We were fighting truly. This debate with people when they were saying that, didn't you feel like a terrorist there? And I would say no, because the Mujahideen battalion, which later became the Mujahideen Brigade, was in fact officially part of the Bosnian Defense Ministry. There was camaraderie, there was solidarity, and there was the feeling that we were there for two reasons. These are the two main goals. One is to defend those who needed defending. And the second is for us to achieve the ultimate objective, which is martyrdom. I arrived just, I think, 3 or 4 weeks after my 16th birthday. And I was praying that I will never see my 17th. I know it's a strange mentality, might seem odd, but that was, how a mujahid would think at that time.
Did you ever feel like you yourself were a terrorist?
I think it started to feel more or less around 1997 when I swore an allegiance to join Al-Qaeda. That was in August of 1997.
Then a series of events occurred, one in particular, the 1998 U.S. Embassy bombings, which killed over 200 people by simultaneous truck bomb explosions in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and the other in Nairobi, Kenya. The event caused him to question his association to the group.
That, when I started to feel as an operative rather than as a classic jihadist soldier on the front lines. It's no longer front lines anymore. I'm training to become a bomb maker, experimenting with explosives, poisons, chemical weapons, biological weapons, not sophisticated ones, but nonetheless lethal, rudimentary ones. And that's when I started to feel that this is really not directed against military. These are not no use in a frontline situation. These are basically to be used against civilians. And that's when I had to ask myself, is it something that I want to continue with? And as time progressed, it started to feel that I was on the wrong side of history rather than being on the right side of history. If you allow others to think on your behalf, and that's almost 99% of the people I was with, then yes, they will continue on this trajectory. So I was almost an anomaly, that I was able to think for myself and at the same time have the bravery to actually say I was wrong.
But Aimen Dean was never your average jihadist. Before joining Al-Qaeda, Dean received the Islamic title of Hafid, someone who has completely memorized the Quran. Do you think the fact that you studied the Quran so thoroughly, probably more than anyone else you fought with, do you think that gave you the tools to be inquisitive enough to leave Al-Qaeda in the first place? That
was a saving grace in itself, because I was able to see through the lies of Al-Qaeda at that time. And one particular example of that was when, after the East Africa bombings happened, I went to the head of the Sharia College for Al-Qaeda. The head of the Sharia College, an Egyptian, I asked him, how could we justify killing 220 civilians just to get at 12 American diplomats? 5,000 were wounded, 150 of them were blinded for life. So it was a shocking death toll. And he told me that since the enemy is located within heavily populated civilian areas, we have the right to go and attack them, because we have a fatwa called the Tatarrus fatwa, which means the human shield fatwa, which allows us to target an enemy hidden within a civilian population. So we took this fatwa, we did it, and if there are so many casualties among civilians, it's on them, not on us. And God will make it up to them anyway.
A fatwa is a ruling on a point of Islamic law given by a recognized authority. But the justification for this fatwa, Dean never found.
I found out that the fatwa does not resemble whatsoever how it was applied in Nairobi or Tanzania. So if they can break this fatwa, really twist it to the point of breaking, if they can do that, what will they do next? If this is the opening, shot of the war, where will it lead us? And I think at that time I realized it will lead us to something really dark, and it truly happened.
In your opinion, where do you think Islam as a culture is going? I
would say there is definitely crisis within Islam. The problem is that the preaching in the Muslim world basically suffered, lots of crises because in Islam, and as you know, many of your viewers basically will recognize this, Islam actually is a guilt-based religion. As many religious, imams across the Muslim world, especially in places where Muslims are minority, in Europe and North America, they started to emphasize over the last generation the aspect of fear rather than love and hope, to put literally the fear of God into their congregation to safeguard them from vices like alcohol and drugs and dating and hip-hop music or anything like that. And you end up with 80% fear, 10% love and 10% hope. So what message is that? It's not going to be something conducive to a good society.
And this fear permeates the culture beyond religion.
Fear basically makes the individual nervous about what will happen afterwards. And at the same time, it makes them lose hope. What they feel is that they are burdened by their sins. They are burdened by the fact that they have sinned a lot against the Lord, and therefore there is no outlet for them. And because they are always told that if you sleep around, hell. If you take drugs, hell. If you sell drugs, even more hell. If you drink around and party, well, there is no salvation for you, that's it, hell. That kind of message actually will make them even go deeper sometime into these situations and become even more desperate to find redemption. And redemption is what groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS sell. So they go to these lost souls and tell them that if you want complete forgiveness, then jihad and martyrdom are the shortest path to heaven and redemption. So of course, it's an attractive proposition for many people who thought that I never opened Quran in my life, I never went to the mosque in my life, I never done anything good in my life, and basically I could just go to heaven immediately ahead of everyone else who were pious throughout their life. It really basically creates a generation of guilty people willing basically to trade that guilt for something that will give them first redemption, and second, a purpose, and third, especially for those who are in prisons. That's why prisons are fertile ground for recruitment, because of all the people who've done bad things and they feel guilty, they want redemption and forgiveness. But at the same time, they are in a humiliating position, so it gives them the third aspect, which is empowerment. If I was Al-Qaeda individual or ISIS individual and I want to go to prison and I want to radicalize people inside, all I have to tell them is that you've done wrong things. I have the solution for you. I have one-way express ticket to heaven. Join our cause, die for it, you go to heaven. And guess what? All that violence that is repressed inside you, basically you can go and unleash it. Unleash the sadist and psychopath inside of you. God will reward you for it even. You direct your violence towards those who deserve it. And guess what? I'll give you something else. I will give you empowerment. Because right now, here in prison, you're humiliated by them, you're under their boots. Tomorrow they will be under yours. I mean, I might have recruited you by now. So.
I almost gave him my email. Aimen Dean, thank you very much.
Thank you.